two main objectives. The first is to advise the government of Kaduna State to tread cautiously in its bid to regulate the affairs of religion in Kaduna State. And secondly, as a general advisory in the context of the recurring incidents of child abduction and abuse of the girl child, which is gradually becoming the norm. Kaduna State has introduced an executive bill that aims to regulate religious activities. Certainly, religious miscreants have caused a lot of havoc in our country, Nigeria. It does appear, however, that the measures proposed are an overkill, with the intention of establishing a 9-man committee that would license religious preachers and regularly monitor them, apart from ensuring that all visiting religious clerics are given a permit by this committee. This has very wide implications. Similarly, outside places of worship, religious activities are to be under strict monitoring, and no religious activities would be allowed after 8 p.m. The danger in Nigeria, always, is the manipulation of structures and institutions by strong individuals. Thus, the fear is that even if the proposed bill contains good aims, the proposed restrictions would play into the hands of officials of state who have a hegemonic mentality and would allow them the freedom to persecute one religion in favor of another. The principle of separation of state and church and mosque, which springs from the secularity of the Nigerian Constitution, will be severely battered if this bill is pursued in the way it is. And Governor El-Rufai, who is quite dogged in the pursuit of anything given these two, would pursue ardently both what is good and potentially divisive. We advise that Kaduna State rely on existing laws and state instruments to maintain religious harmony in Kaduna State, instead of reinventing the wheel. The majority of Kaduna people appear not to want this law, and their wishes should be respected, as no governor is an emperor, but an elected official who should defer to the people's will. The people's will is sovereign. So because of the potential abuses this bill could bring when it becomes a law, we opine that it is not necessary. Now, on the dignity of women and girls. It was unfortunate that the Senate recently shouted down the bill on gender equality. While it could be argued that in many African societies, there is a resistance towards the kind of gender advocacy that comes from the West, there is no arguing the fact that women and girls undergo many abuses in our country, including underage and forced marriages, rape, trafficking, and so on. Women and girls deserve their God-given inherent respect and dignity. As John Paul II observed, women should be valued beyond their physical appearance to what he calls feminine genius. That is, their giftedness, skills, professionalism, intellectual abilities, deep sensitivity, in a word, the very dignity of their being. The treatment given to women in many cultures and communities in Nigeria is a symptom of the overall deficiency in the respect for life, which engenders a mindset that sees life as dispensable. It is thus not surprising that we hear of shedding of life during elections and during intertribal invasions, such as between the Fulani herdsmen and many communities. Also underlying this is a materialistic attitude which sees the female species not as fully human, but as an object for male gratification. This objectification hides itself in cultural norms which, though meant to be dynamic, are seen as static and therefore used in the dehumanization process of the girl child and the female gender. We have to come to terms with the reality that the woman is also a human being with inherent dignity as intended and created by God. We call on traditional institutions all over Nigeria to emulate the example of the Emir of Kano, who did the right thing by stating the right teaching of the Holy Prophet Muhammad in the case of the abduction and forced marriage of the girl child, Esther. Traditional institutions should be in the forefront of promoting peaceful coexistence in this great country and should proactively deconstruct and upturn a mindset which sees other cultures or religions as inferior and lacking in inherent rights to exist and flourish. Nigerian citizens should continue to engage political and state structures to become institutions which are guided by the rule of law. The President Buhari-led administration should revisit the provisions of the National Conference and institute measures which should stand Nigeria on the pillars of justice and peace. Presently, our constitution is like a hermaphrodite, neither completely secular nor religious. A secular constitution guarantees the rights and dignity of all under the law. And as the revisions or the review of the constitution will be undertaken by the 8th Assembly, the secularity of the Nigerian state should be paramount. Thank you very much.